Welcome to Paid for Your Presence, powered by Soulful AI. I'm Erica Duran, business mentor, brand strategist, and creator of the Paid for Your Presence method. This isn't another Grow Your Following show. Each week, you'll get unfiltered strategy, grounded frameworks, and the kind of truth-telling most marketing podcasts avoid, so you can grow your brand without diluting your voice or burning out. Here we focus on elevating your expertise, refining your message, and designing a way of working that actually fits you, so business feels aligned again. Because you don't need a bigger stage, you need a stronger presence. Forget the rules, take a breath, tune in, and step into your authority. Never settle. This wasn't a pivot. It was a correction back to truth. Hey, it's Erica. Welcome back to Paid for Your Presence. If you've been following this Welcome Back series, the first few episodes were about returning, rediscovering your rhythm, reclaiming your voice, and clearing the noise that made you forget how powerful stillness can be. But this moment right here, it's the shift, the point where clarity replaces chaos and you start asking, what am I actually building now? This wasn't a pivot, it was a correction. And there's a difference. That's the space I want to take you into today. The space where creativity stops being a reflex and becomes a decision. I've lived both sides of that equation. And what I'm sharing in this episode isn't about slowing down for the sake of calm. It's about building something that can actually hold you. So take a breath. Let's talk about what happens when you stop working from impulse and start building with intention. The rebuild energy. By the time this initial rebuild started, nothing was technically wrong. Clients were getting results, payments were coming in, content was going out. From the outside, it all looked great, polished, consistent, successful. But something underneath had shifted. I couldn't quite name it at first. My voice sounded fine, but it didn't feel like mine. The words coming out were still powerful, but they were running on muscle memory instead of meaning. It's that strange season where you realize you've evolved, but your business hasn't caught up yet. You're standing in a version of your work that once fit perfectly, but now feels like it's holding you in. I used to love everything about what I built, the branding, the strategy, even the daily rhythm of it. I'd catch myself avoiding my own website, skimming over my own emails, and thinking, I used to believe this. Where did that energy go? And that's the thing about growth. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. It starts as a little misalignment that turns into full body knowing this chapter is complete. I tried to ignore it for a while. I told myself I just needed new photos, maybe a sharper tagline, maybe a different strategy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about tweaking the outside. It was the inside that had shifted. So I gave myself permission to start over, not to throw everything away, but to rebuild in a different foundation, one that matched who I'd become, not who I was when I first built it. And for me, that always means a full teardown. New platform, new structure, new rhythm. Because I don't just update, I reinvent. When it's time to evolve, I don't touch up the paint. I rebuild the entire house. That's where this chapter began, in that quiet between moment where you finally admit that nothing's wrong, but everything needs to change. The rebuild moment. It was late December 2021 and nothing was technically wrong. Business was steady, clients were happy, but I could feel it in my body. Something was done. So I did what I always do when that whisper shows up. I tore everything down. I opened up a brand new account on an all-in-one website platform and started rebuilding from zero. New colors, new fonts, new photos. I even bought one of those curated color palettes off Etsy, the kind that promises to make your brand look instantly cohesive. And for a few days it worked. It looked fresh, clean, elevated, except it wasn't new. It was the same tropical branding I'd been recycling since my Hawaii days. Back then, Hawaii was my co host. I had resort partnerships, ocean shoots, and palm tree and laptop photos that made me stand out from every Me Too coach online. But this new version, it felt like cosplay. I remember scrolling through the site, staring at all those perfect turquoise buttons, thinking, this looks like me, but it doesn't feel like me. A client once told me, you had me at palm trees and dachshunds. At the time, I thought that was adorable. Now I realized it also summed up the problem. People loved the vibe, the fantasy, but they weren't connecting to me. And that's when I saw what had happened. I'd started mistaking branding for boldness. When I first built my business, the whole thing was a risk. Quitting a Fortune 50 career, launching multiple ventures, building a travel agency. That version of me was fearless. But over the years, that fearlessness got replaced by polish, by strategy, by safety. Somewhere between California and Florida with detours through Arizona and Hawaii. Between boldness and best practices, I stopped taking real chances. So there I was, staring at this beautiful new website, realizing I hadn't evolved. I just upgraded the packaging. Reinvention changes the surface, correction changes the structure. That was the moment I decided to excavate, not elevate. When you've been in a business a while, the temptation is to keep polishing what's already working. New logo, new copy, same foundation. It feels responsible, strategic, mature. But sometimes maturity is just a prettier form of fear. Rebuilding from the ground up isn't reckless, it's clarifying. It forces you to ask, what part of this is still true? What part am I performing? And if you listen, that's where your next chapter starts. Not in the rebrand, but in a return, the excavation. When I finally stopped editing fonts and started asking questions, the real rebuild began. I wasn't just changing my website, I was changing how I made decisions. Every detail became a mirror. Why this color? Why this offer? Why this photo that still looked like the old version of me? It wasn't just aesthetic misalignment, it was energetic. That site represented a version of me that built out of adrenaline, chasing what was next, chasing what looked good, chasing what I thought would convert. But there's a cost to building from adrenaline. You get results, but they never last. Because what adrenaline builds, alignment has to clean up. So I slowed everything down, and the more I slowed down, the more my real voice came back. Not the one trained by the algorithm, but the one that knows when to say, that's enough for today. That's when I started rebuilding the ecosystem you know now. Paid for your presence, Soulful AI, and the 5 pillars that connect it all. Each offer stopped being a sprint and became a structure. Each piece of content stopped being a post and became an asset. When you're building intentionally, you stop obsessing over how to stay visible and start asking how to stay valuable. Because visibility fades, but value compounds. I had to learn that the hard way. Rebuilding wasn't about starting from scratch, it was about starting from self. It was learning that you can't evolve your brand without evolving your behavior. If you're listening and you're in that something's off season, start there. Look at what you've built and ask yourself, does this still fit who I am? Or am I keeping it alive because I'm afraid to admit it's over? Because when you stop decorating the version that's done, you make space for the one that's next. From reaction to resonance. After the teardown came the quiet. No more dashboards, no launch countdowns, no 20-tab chaos. Just me walking, voice noting in day one and later ChatGPT, and letting my own thoughts get loud again. At first, it felt wrong. When you've lived in a cycle of constant output, silence feels suspicious, like you're missing something. But that quiet is where resonance starts. I used to think clarity came from creating more. Now I know clarity comes from listening longer. So I listened to what I wanted to say instead of what I was supposed to post, to what my clients were really asking instead of what I thought they needed, to the rhythm of my own life, how I naturally work, think, rest, and reset. That's where the new structure took shape. 5 pillars: the clean offer suite, the private podcast format. Each pillar became a home for ideas that once scattered across 10 different projects. Everything finally had a place to belong. When you move from reaction to resonance, you start seeing the pattern in your own brilliance. You realize every offer you've ever built was pointing towards the same message. You just couldn't see it through the noise. Now I create inside an ecosystem instead of chasing isolated wins. Every post, every program, every piece of content connects to something else. Nothing is random anymore. It doesn't mean I've lost creativity, it means I've given it boundaries. Because boundaries don't limit your genius, they concentrate it. I stopped asking, what can I launch next? And started asking, what's worth sustaining? That's when everything got easier: content, offers, marketing, even rest. Because once your work starts echoing itself, you don't need to shout anymore. Building with intention. If your business feels like it's running 3 speeds faster than your body can move, this is your cue to pause. Not because you're lazy, but because you're out of sync with yourself. There's a difference between momentum and movement. Momentum keeps you spinning. Movement takes you somewhere. Stability isn't what you choose when you're done growing. It's what you choose when you know what you're building. I learned that the hard way. For years, I measured progress by output: how fast I could launch, how much I could post, how many things I could make before lunch. It worked until it didn't. I was producing constantly, but none of it was compounding. Now, before I build anything, I ask 3 questions. 1, does this connect to what already exists? 2, does it serve my people or my pride? And 3, will it still matter 6 months from now? If any of those answers feel shaky, I stop. Because if I can't answer with clarity, I'm probably creating from compulsion, not conviction. These questions changed how I move through my days. I used to have a thought and post it instantly: a caption, a quote, a story. Now I'll voice note it, let it breathe, and revisit it a day later. 9 times out of 10, the message gets sharper when it isn't rushed. That's what I teach clients now. Let your brilliance marinate. Building with intention means trading constant reinvention for continuous refinement. It's not about doing less, it's about doing what lasts. When you design systems that protect your peace, you don't have to perform productivity anymore. You become productive by default. The entrepreneurs who last aren't the ones who post the most. They're the ones whose work keeps compounding quietly in the background. They create assets, not noise. They build ecosystems, not empires. And that's what paid for your presence really means. It's not about selling harder. It's about being so rooted in who you are that your presence does the selling for you. When you build from intention, your business stops being a performance. It becomes proof that clarity, calm, and consistency create more wealth than any rush ever could. Integration. So, if there's one thing I hope you take from this episode, it's that slowing down isn't the end of momentum. It's how you create the right kind of momentum, the kind that feels steady, sustainable, yours. When you stop building from impulse and start building with intention, your work begins to breathe with you. Ideas don't feel forced anymore, they find their own timing. Clients come with less chasing, and your calendar starts to reflect your actual life, not the performance of one. That's what this whole rebuild gave back to me, the sense of calm competence, the ability to trust that what I'm creating is enough because I'm enough. So if you're in that in between season right now, where nothing's technically wrong, but everything feels off, let that be your cue to pause. Not forever, just long enough to let your work catch up to who you've become. Because the moment you stop trying to outrun your business, that's the moment it starts running with you. That's what correction looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just honest enough to change everything. Impulse builds quickly. Correction builds what lasts. If this episode landed, let it land slowly. You don't need to rush into action. This season is about building businesses that can hold you, not exhaust you. If you're ready to explore what that looks like in practice, you'll find the next layer of work inside my private community, Circle by Erica Duran. Details are in the show notes. Never settle. Thank you for tuning in to Paid for Your Presence, powered by Soulful AI. Join me inside Circle by Erica Duran, a private network where entrepreneurs connect for strategy, referrals, and collaboration, and where connection naturally turns into opportunity. Because presence isn't about being everywhere, it's about being unmistakable where it matters. Never settle.